seat. Thank you for being accommodating and talking about the library. We normally do that the second to last, or the weekend before last week. We normally will have a town hall, and that we're going to finish a week earlier than normal. So normally we'd be done the 28th of April. We're done the 21st of April, so we had to move it up a week. So thank you for accommodating and coming here. It's always a great place to come and have a chat. I'll just give you a quick overview where we're at in the House. Travis will give you an overview on where we're at in the Senate, and then it's your town hall, so what's what you have to say. The two big issues yet moving that we got to finalize really are the House budget, or the state budget, which is House first and Senate first are now in a conference committee, and then the road funding bill, which is also in conference committee right now, being negotiated out. So those two things will end obviously this week, and we'll see where those two things go. Those are the two big issues on the agenda. Just from the pure numbers, it's been, I think, a fairly quiet session. We haven't moved a lot of bills out. We haven't done a lot of things that we've kind of stayed on focus. If you look at kind of the agenda items on the House, maintain a balanced budget, fight our long-term infrastructure for our top two, committing to education students. I think we've done some better things for education than we have maybe in the past. We're focusing on attracting, retaining workforce. Got some good things moving there. And then obviously we have the drug problem in Indiana. We're trying to get a handle on some of that. So outside of that, there has been a couple of things that have come up here at the end, and we can chat about those. Alcohol, we have some pretty strict, and I would admit maybe even some archaic alcohol laws in the state of Indiana. And those kind of came to a head this week when when it was discovered that a Ricker's convenience store they have sell burritos, and they qualified as a restaurant. And by qualifying for a restaurant, it allows them to serve cold beer, carry out, and liquor. And so the whole discussion of whether they should or should not needs to be had. But a bigger issue is just having to look at our liquor laws in Indiana and have to reevaluate those, because they're pretty convoluted and somewhat archaic. So that's an issue that still is going to be dealt with this week, and will create a lot of buzz probably in the media. But we'll get there eventually. So that's kind of the House perspective, and I'll let Travis talk about something.
Sure. Thanks for being here today, and Matt, thanks for setting this up for us. Rode along interns. This is the last third House that we're doing. We have been webcasting these, and so these are being webcast. We sent out notice to all the newspapers in my Senate district. So we have a lot of people that are watching online. They can actually log in and ask questions online. So if we do get one, they may be interrupting us to ask a question to somebody else out in Jay County or Huntington County, Grant County may have about what we're talking about today. As Matt said, we're coming down to the wire. We have to be done Friday night. So hopefully we get across the goal line here pretty quick. We got a revenue forecast came in this past week. It looked pretty good for us. The things are going to be improving much better than what we thought, but then we found two pretty big holes that we're going to have to fill. One was with DCS, Department of Child Services, because we've just seen such an increase year to year. Over the last 5 years, we've had about a 20% increase in CHINS cases, which are children in need of services, kids that are removed from the home or become wards of the court. And that cost is basically eating us alive right now, to be honest with you folks. 80% of those cases, of all those kids, are related to some form of drug abuse. And so we've been trying to tackle the drug abuse issue. We probably have about 7 or 8 pieces of legislation trying to just nibble away at some of the issues out there with regard to drug abuse. So that's on the prevention side, that hopefully is going to help to slow down the referrals that we're getting for CHINS, which is driving the cost significantly. And then we sort of have a hole in the Medicaid program. We're come up, I think, about $50 million short on Medicaid funding. We're going to have to use some of that those extra dollars we thought we had are going to be used to help supplement Medicaid. So that uses up most all of the extra money that we thought we would have. But we are continuing to see some growth in the state and revenues. And so we're in really a pretty good condition right now. As Matt said, balanced budget, getting the budget done is top priority. Second priority, of course, is going to be infrastructure and roads and doing what we can with road funding. Glad to hear your opinion about what we need to do to raise the funds needed. Went to Bluffton last night from home, and came from Bluffton last night and had to take a detour because there was a bridge out. They're working on the bridge, and 224, there's bridge work coming up to be done. One half of all of our bridges in the state of Indiana will need to be replaced or have major repairs done in the next 10 years. And so we've got a lot of local road and bridge work that needs to be done. And hopefully we'll come out of this session giving locals the funds that they need to get that work done and get contractors out there on the job. So be glad to take any questions that any of you have.
Matt, I see you and Indiana legislators talking about the alcohol problem. Is that something that's going to be solved, or is that something that's going to be patched up? I think you were requesting a 2-year interim study, and the other lady, she was requesting a 3-month summer one.
Yeah. The problem with our alcohol laws currently is if you think about it, most of the laws we have foundationally, when it comes to alcohol, it comes out of prohibition.
Right.
Because when prohibition was repealed, it was sent back to the states, and they said every state can create their own alcohol law. They completely regulate it at the state level. So we put together this distribution system, who can sell when, where, how, and all that kind of stuff. Then over the years, things changed. Just in the last 10 years, even since I've been there, we've seen the craft brewers market share grow. We've seen the Indiana wineries really accelerate. We've seen now artisan distillers of vodka and gin and things like that. And so you really have to have this debate of, we keep saying we're gonna do this, we're gonna allow this, we're gonna the big push is Sunday sales. The other push is alcohol and selling cold beer in the convenience stores. I've said all along, I don't necessarily have a problem with any of that. My issue becomes more a level playing field, and what do we do with hard liquor, which is really the drug of alcohol. And when you think about it, I can't take my 19-year-old into a liquor store. I can't even enter the building. Big sign, do not enter. But I can stand out here in the liquor aisle at Walmart with a 10-year-old, a 5-year-old, and I can go to the other aisle and leave them there alone. Yeah. I'm going to come back and get them, type of thing. And they can pick it up, they can put it in the cart, they can do all that stuff. That creates, in my opinion, a very level playing field in which we have to do it. But to do that, and that's why I asked for a longer study, you can't simply pass a bill that says, so it is written, so it shall be done. You have to look at how we create the foundation. And we keep, the example I gave in the committee the other day was we keep hanging new drapes and repainting the walls, but we're ignoring this completely foundational aspect. So the long-term look will be all policy in the state of Indiana. What's good public policy, what's protection against providers, and yet we don't want to prohibit market share. We don't want to create a market share system. We want to create a protection of public policy system. So I don't think you do that in 3 meetings in one summer. I do think you have to create, you can't go back and fix the Ricker issue because constitutionally you can't make a law that's retroactive. So they got their permits. They're going to probably keep their permits. What we can do is change them going forward in how we handle this. And I think long term, we have to have that debate as to what is good public policy.
I want to follow up on that and compliment you, Matt. I also watched that show, and I really appreciate your knowledge and eloquence on the topic. My thing with the alcohol debate is you're dealing with, just like what you said, a world of ancient laws. that you've got to clear. And that would be great. Because last time I checked, we're all about capitalism and consumer demand, and that ought to be just cleaned up in a lot of ways. So, but I want to compliment you because I appreciated how you represented our district and your thoughtfulness and knowledge about the topic. And so good luck with that. And let's see if we can't get, last time I checked, I thought that's what we were all about, was a consumer generated economy.
And the thing I found, because
the consumers want to buy on Sunday.
Yes.
This is not a mystery.
And the thing I found that very interesting, I had a bill earlier in the year on the history of the General Assembly. We have a written history of the General Assembly from 1816 to 1978, and then it stopped. So I had a bill that would continue that with putting a group of scholars together and so on. But it's been fascinating reading that old history. The very first alcohol law passed in Indiana in 1817, the first year we became a legislature. In 1817 was the ban of sale on Sunday. Not sell alcohol on Sunday. Now, my question was, in 1817, was that driven by morals or was it driven by money? And I think today the issue of Sunday sales is driven by money and market. It's a different M today. Now, there's a lot of people who say, hey, I don't, Sunday should be, and that's fine. We'll have that discussion. But I think you're right. I think the public has said, give us access. But you talk to any of the big stores, and they'll tell you the biggest problem they have is with their hard alcohol stuff. It's not coming from,
that's their
it can't
problem.
be from 40-year-olds, but it's only coming from kids.
That's
And that's their problem. But it raises the issue of should it be in, should hard alcohol be in the, in the big box stores? We've had to, I tell the story that, when I was in elementary and in middle school, our gym teacher told us, boys, you're all going to someday drink when you're not smart enough to know what you're doing. You don't know the difference between 8 ounces of beer and 8 ounces of vodka. Because 8 ounces is 8 ounces, right? He said, one will make you sick and you'll throw up on your mom's carpet, the other will kill you. And that's what we have to make sure, because I think it is a drug. We have to make sure that we're controlling. And we have a lot more alcohol-related incidences health-wise. Right now the big thing is smoking, right? We have to have cigarette tax because smoking. We have more health-related costs to the state of Indiana on alcohol than we do on that.
Yeah, well, as a store designer and for 20 years, worked for a company in Fort Wayne. Now I work for a company in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm bringing those dollars into the state. There's, that's their problem. There are stores in, California, they have to lock up spray paint.
Yeah.
So they have to, this is a pretty simple method. They just buy a shelving unit that has grids on it, and you're not going to get that spray paint through there. Again, you can't legislate morality. And that, I think that, I don't think that argument maybe plays in Indianapolis for everybody, but you can. But if that's the case, there's a way to keep drugs behind lock and key.
Well,
and it isn't complex, really.
And that's been one of our we had a bill 2 years ago that would allow Sunday sales with one caveat. The retailers have to put their alcohol behind a counter or behind a secure area.
Pretty simple to
And
do.
they refused.
Well,
They said, we just can't do that. So, it's going to take, that's why I said on the lawmakers, we almost have to do this initially without the influence of the lobby, because the system. I went out in the hallway and every single one of them said, Representative Lane, we agree 100% with you. You are absolutely 100% dead on right. Just don't touch our parts.
Right.
We stop that because it's like y'all have to deal with these individuals in Indianapolis, and I can't be there to go, I'm behind you, Matt, you're right.
Well, what we do
We can't take 40 people from Adams County to support you on it so that you feel you have that support.
I know where we're at.
Keep in mind that I know Matt and I agree on this. Our point of reference is not 462 Burn and Marple and Roanoke and Warren. We don't think about how this affects Indianapolis and the central part of the state and how it affects us out around the state and within our districts. But it's a complicated issue. You know, when you think about Sunday sales, one of the groups of folks that are so opposed to it are small business, small liquor package stores, because they're saying, we're not going to sell any more liquor on open up on Sunday. It's just going to be more cost for us, more overhead. So I've got to work on Sunday, or I've got to hire somebody else to work for me on Sunday, and I'm not going to sell any more liquor in 7 days than I do in 6 days. And so they're opposed to Sunday sales for a whole different reason.
They can stay closed.
Than what
They have the right to stay closed.
they do. But
And Matt made the point in that discussion too the other day that he lives 6 months. You know, people just have to drive over the border.
I mean, this is not a new thing, depending on where you live in the United States. There are people who choose not to sell cookies on Sunday. So they can choose not to be. The argument is the individual, the consumer, the person who's paying the taxes. I agree. If I want to go down the road and buy it, somebody who chooses to be open, I should have that ability.
And that's why I talk about this foundational, because it goes beyond just the product. It looks at the permitting process. You know, a lot of these alcohol permits, because they're limited, are very, very valuable. So you take a small liquor store that pays $250,000 for their alcohol permit, you know, and Rickers gets a restaurant permit for $1,000, and they can do the exact same thing liquor stores do. So it's all, there's a lot of subsurface that goes beyond just where can I buy my alcohol. ATC, you know, I find it interesting. We have the gaming commission that regulates gaming. These two entities cannot converse except in a public meeting. So the commissioner of the gaming commission cannot talk to a permittee of a casino. They can't. That's forbidden. They can't have these private conversations. We don't have that in the ATC and alcohol commission. The alcohol commissioners can go to dinner with the permittees of alcohol. They can go to a Colts game with the permittees of alcohol. You know, if we're really talking about a regulated product and a regulated system, all that has to be reviewed. Not just, hey, I want to buy alcohol on Sunday, or I want to buy cold beer at the convenience store. The whole structure needs to be rebuilt. And that's a long-term prospect, to your point.
And to Travis's comments on the roads, how much of that is local? Because I see it a 10-cent state of Indiana for IDEM to do whatever they want. Indiana, or I'm not INDOT, I guess. And then just the fees and stuff, the license branch for locals. And I'm saying, what about the increase for locals down the road? Because I look at it, local roads are really suffering.
well, there are a lot more local roads than there are state highways.
And I would say this, both House Bill and Senate bill pushes more money than you have today, even without the gas tax.
Right.
More money back to the locals.
But I'm talking
gas tax,
5 years.
Yeah, Bill, I would say this is not, and this is what we said from the very beginning. We do not want a 2-year road plan. We don't want a 4-year road plan. We want a long-term sustainable road plan. So when we talk about how much we send back to locals, you know, we're looking at, from a percentage standpoint, right now it's 53-47. 53 goes state, 47 goes locals. We're tilting that the local road street money that gets split between state and local, and trying to move all of that to locals. We're taking the community grant money that was 50-50. You raise 50% of the money, we'll match it on the state level down to 80-20. Okay, the Senate didn't necessarily like that, but one thing we've now been negotiating on is, do we do that, keep a lower percentage, either 70-30 or 80-20 for smaller counties? Because the match is what's hard for a town of Monroe. A match is what's hard for a Blackford County. You know, now, can a Hamilton County come up with a 50% match on roads? Yeah. So what we're going to do is look at populations or some other matrix to say, at some level, you don't want to just continue to fund the locals with gobs and gobs of money that they now start to think of what can we use this on a project on.
Right.
But really get into the hands of, I tell people, you drive down 27 south of Geneva, you know, that's not 465, that's not I-70, that's not I-65. But that road is a priority. Now it's to be done this year. It's on the list for this year. But those are the things that we have to look at and say, and it goes back to Travis's point of this district. I think you're gonna see more money come back to Adams County, more money come back to Wells County. In either bill, really, but I think the House version, and this isn't Travis, this is more to some of the leadership on his side, think we give too much to locals. And that's the discussion we're having this week.
I think you'll see an overall net of probably close to 60-40 split.
Okay.
60 going to locals, 40 to the state. And I think that's probably where you're going to end up by the time we get everything factored in with the community crossroads program that we've got on the matching program, and then just the outright grant, because I think all of the, one of the proposals is all of the increase in annual fees for your license plates, all of that would go to the locals. And so by the time you get that all divvied up, I think you're going to look at it to see probably close to 60-40, maybe 65-35.
Well, having dealt with in Northeast Indiana, I have concerns.
Yeah.
Well,
They're a bunch of idiots.
Well, you're not the first to say that. One of the other things we are both dedicated to, House and Senate, is obviously to look at from a dedicated money standpoint. And one of the things, you know this as well as anybody, Bill, on the MPH fund, there's a lot of leeway in that. And we found some places were hiring police officers and buying new police cars because MPH says that you can be used for public safety. So that's a stretch, in my opinion. So we're going to put some parameters, some guardrails in there to say a certain percentage of that must go to roads and bridges. You can't, you know, they can paint infrastructure. Well, under the MVH fund, which is the Motor Vehicle Highway Fund, that painting has always been intended to be bridges and other maintenance things. They've been using it to paint firehouses. So those things come to light. You begin to put the rails on them and say, hey, we got to make sure that we're doing what the taxpayers asked us to, which is you're going to have to take my money for roads, use it for roads. So there's going to be a dedicated fund from the tax increase.
Or use it for the highway department, because I remember having a discussion with the State Board of Accounts in regards to buying a computer for down at this highway department as an auditor and saying, look, that's highway. And they said, no, it's not highways. The law says highways. Well, it has to include the infrastructure that they need to support the highways too.
And your MVH fund will be able to do that. Your local road and street fund cannot. Because your local road and street fund shows just asphalt and concrete.
Anything besides roads? Yes, ma'am.
Some more on roads.
Education, yes. I see that it says that 358 million goes to public schools. How much actually goes to public schools as opposed to vouchers and charters? What your budget, can you break that down for me, the education funding, what percent actually goes to public schools? Because if you're representing your area, they're not, the original intent of vouchers was to allow people to choose to get out of failing school, which that has changed drastically now. You don't have to get out of failing school. But what percent of the education funding actually goes to public schools as opposed to charters and vouchers?
If you take the total public funds, what goes to charters and vouchers, you're looking probably close to 96-97% goes to public schools.
And most of the percentage of people choose the public school. So, I mean, it should be a huge chunk, but,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, but less people, less than 97% choose a public school.
But it's a big.
So they're getting more than their percentage of overall students. If you take every student that goes to school in the state of Indiana, more than 97% of those kids do not go to public school.
What is the percentage?
I don't know. I'd say it's probably high 80s.
It's gotta be.
Okay, high 80s. So if we really talk about, and this has been the crux of all this discussion, is if dollars follow the student, then public education will get 87% of the money. But they're getting 97% of the money, which is good. I'm just saying that's where the money goes. And that's why when you hear about vouchers, hear about charters, it is a very, very, very small percent.
But it
of the public money.
continues to grow
3%.
and you continue to make it easier. For example, I've seen that now a first year voucher school, maybe this has changed since I've read it, they don't have to even be accredited. I mean, come on, that means anybody can open a school and get taxpayer dollars, and I mean,
Yeah,
it's like.
I'll say this, almost all of the voucher issues out there yet are unsettled.
And the voucher money continues to grow. You've got no proof that they're better than. They can now go to a voucher school that's a failing school, and you turn your head for 2 years and allow it to happen.
I don't.
The rules are not the same. It's not a fair playing field at all with your public, your voucher, and your charter schools. It's not a fair playing
So
field.
let me ask you this. We talked about consumer driven. If there's a demand for vouchers, which there is,
Sure.
why not give them, why not have
And
that?
you're also talking that, what's the income? How high can it be? I mean, pretty daggone high, where they could be affording their own. If you choose to send your child to a private school, they can afford
I have an
it.
answer for that.
I'm just saying, we want to debate and we want to have issues regarding let people decide their own fate.
Do
right?
you want your
People-
public schools?
When people say, I want to buy alcohol when I want, where I want to decide what I can do here, when, and there. But if it comes to my child going to school, the state should decide that, not the parents, not the adult, not to say, hey, I want my child to go to a private school.
That's not.
And there are parameters within those vouchers. There is a
A
fiscal to
little
that.
bit.
It's enough. You're not talking about the guy who's running GE or,
What is
Yeah,
the
but we've had-
income?
Yeah, but we've
What
had,
is the income limit?
I think it's for a family of four, around $65,000.
More than an educator would make.
I thought educators making 60.
I agree.
Not most of them, not here.
For a
I
family of
agree. We have a
four,
Family
lot,
of four?
two
we
working
have
adults.
we had private schools before we had public schools in the state of Indiana. And the state of Indiana actually paid parochial schools to take students in the 1800s because we didn't have public schools. I think the real argument here is those of us, and I come from a parochial school family, but I sent my kids to public school. And from those lovely public schools, we produced a PhD in physics, and we've got someone pursuing a master's in anthropology. You know, that wasn't by accident. And so I have a real loyalty to my public schools. And I remember my family writing checks to support our parochial school when we had no children in parochial school. So that happened for a long, long time. That's for the history of Indiana. And I think the real thing, the real tender thing, and I'm sure you hear it, but it doesn't come out in the media, is separation of church and state.
That's already been decided.
That's been settled by the Supreme Court.
The other thing is that I agree with you. These students are not getting the same education. I have been blessed with activities that my children did when they were children, they're now young men, to be with students who are being homeschooled at a very high level and just would knock out any school maybe in the state. But I've also been around students who the parents shouldn't probably be allowed to cross the street with their children. And it's a problem. It really is a problem. I mean, you know, when I see people on social media saying things that I learned in 4th grade in civics, we didn't call it civics class, about what your role is and about the separation of powers in our government, and they're clueless. I mean, it's very concerning to me that the students are not getting a proper education. It's very concerning to me that they're not getting a science education that they should. I mean, 6th and 7th and 8th grade science fair was pivotal for my children, absolutely pivotal. And I don't think it's being addressed. It's cool that we have the really high level ones that I get. But there's a hole in the bucket, and where are these children going? I mean, what are they taught? It's not okay.
You admit there's a hole in the public education bucket as well.
Well, that's what the separation of church and state should be. You're a state elected official. And I feel like it should be a priority. You know, I'm a Purdue mother. Purdue is rated as a top 100 school in the world. We should want in our little state of Indiana, started out as a little state ag college. It's an amazing college. Why are we not supporting every single public school with the hope that they're going, and I use a very good school. I mean, we've got a lot of good schools.
We got a lot of great schools, but then here's my question. Okay, so Purdue's gonna start a high school. They wanna start an academic high school in Indianapolis that has the potential to pull kids away from public education. Is that good or bad?
It should be a public school. They're a public school. If it's a public school.
Well, but as a charter school, it's gonna be a public charter school.
Oh, yeah, there is a difference, because they're run quite often,
Yeah.
I mean, for profit.
I mean, that,
Well, all charters are public schools.
Correct, they're, yes, they are, but they're for profit.
I just,
Run by
Keep
corporations
in mind,
outside state,
let me just say something.
quite often.
Keep in mind, the foundational grant per student for the choice scholarship is about 60% of what the school corporation gets in public school for the public school student, okay? That's the foundational, that's all the money that that choice program gets. On top of that extra 40% that the public school gets for that student, they also get Title I dollars. They also get the complexity index. They also get the benefit of the taxpayers' taxes going for capital projects, for operational costs, and for transportation. So when you shake it all out, it comes out to about 50% of the cost for those kids that are getting a voucher. So all of that excess that isn't used goes to the public school.
Now, let's look
Okay.
at this kind of students the public school must accept and compare that to the kind of
Right.
students the voucher or charter school may choose to accept, or may choose to say, sorry, we have no room for you, you got special needs, you're in a public school, therefore you need that extra funding.
And at
I
best-
know,
and
my
at-
sister
and at
taught
best-
parochial
and
in
at
Fort
best-
Wayne. I
And
know
at
what they
best, there
do.
are 50,000 voucher students and charter school students in the state of Indiana. Do you know how many public school students there are, or how many kids there are in the state of Indiana? K through 12? There's over 1 million, okay? So we're talking 50,000 as opposed to nearly 1.1 million students.
but you understand our
And-
concern.
Playing field.
And 65% of that funding or less goes to those kids at voucher. So in
But you
actuality,
understand our
when you.
concern.
I understand the
I
concern.
I understand.
But I'll also say this, and this is, don't take this the wrong way. I hear horrible things about charters and vouchers, and it's all horrible stuff. And public schools are the sacred cow we don't touch. And yet we have failing public schools.
And charters.
But we have failing public schools across Indiana. How do you fix that problem?
That's,
Because you can't touch them.
But you allow.
We have
charter schools to fail.
we have a Gary school system that graduates 30% of their kids.
Is that in our district?
And is 100, it's gonna affect you. Here's why, because Gary's $100 million, $100 million in the hole, not in debt, in their checkbook. And who are they coming to get the money? You. And you, and you, and me, and Travis.
it's,
Because the state says, they come and say, we're a public school. You have to pay us, you have to bail us out, because we are a public school, and the taxpayers of Indiana are on the hook for that. Not the people in Gary,
There are
we are.
three charter schools in the district, Fort Wayne, you don't have to look too far to see. Their grades are D's and F's. They continue to be operating.
And we operate public school. I agree, let's talk about, let's create a public and charter level playing field. I'm all for saying, look, if you're a failing charter, you're done. Okay, we should hold them to the same standard. Okay, I think to a certain extent they are. We have kids coming out of Bishop Dwyer, Bishop Lewis, they're engineers, they're going to Purdue.
no,
You
and,
know, we don't have, we have to do the same thing. We can't talk in these absolutes. Not every public school is good. Not every charter is good.
well,
Okay? So what we do is, how do we address the problem ones? How do we say, look, if you got a failing public school, do we have an obligation or not? Or we just say, you know what, it's okay because they're a public school, just leave them alone. That's why Gary's 100 million in the hole. That's why Muncie's $18 million underwater in their checkbook. And it's not, I've heard this week, well, it's because of charters and vouchers. That's why they're in trouble. No, it's a declining enrollment because of a population shift. People don't live in Gary anymore. They don't live in Muncie, and the schools have not adapted. That's the truth. That's the reality of public education.
Society has changed. You talk about the children in need of services. When you see some of the environments they're going home to,
Absolutely.
I mean, that's society.
And I've said this, the 800-pound girl in the room is parents.
Yep.
You brought it up.
Yep.
You know, what do we do with parents? Do we have an obligation as a society to go and say, look, you're doing a horrible job educating your child. The state has to step in. That's a dangerous slope, but it's a scary
I think
proposition.
you need to stay away from that.
But it's a scary proposition to think you have parents today
I do too.
who could care less if their kids get a decent
Right.
education.
Right.
That's horrible. That's horrible.
On that same take, even the homeschooling, there's absolutely no accountability. You can allow students to be, for some, they're just staying at home instead of going to school. That's their homeschooling. And there are some
There's still
that do
some,
a
I mean, they want
fantastic
to
job.
go to college, they have to
True,
follow,
but there's no
passing and
accountability
testing.
for them.
I just think, I think the problem, I don't know.
I don't think
I'm
it's-
afraid this is gonna be just like the prohibition law. I think 15 years down the road, you're gonna have the same problems with this as you have with prohibition laws. That we've opened up a whole can of worms because we changed the rules.
Well, you can almost make the same argument that our public education structure was built in the 1800s.
Correct.
So we continue to hang more and more on that same structure. Do we recreate public education?
I
I mean,
think
so when we talk about it, it's like the prohibition.
for sure we have to keep up with science and technology.
Yeah.
And again, you know, I'm going back to being a Purdue mom. I mean, this is not hard to do when you've got universities at the level that we have in our state to model what we need to be doing in primary school. And, you know, it's not like we're a desert for that. And, you know, I would like to, I think we've created a mess. And it's gonna just keep going in the ditch because you keep trying to fix the mess and address that where, you know, I don't think the legislature can create a Concordia Lutheran High School. Again, Concordia Lutheran High School is rated as the top high school in the country. You know, you can't make that happen with vouchers. That community made that happen.
But do
And I
we
just
cut off
think
access to that school for parents who want that
I
choice?
think those parents know better than the legislature does.
So when they choose to go there, that's their choice, not ours.
Like I said, I think we muddied the whole system up. And the call I made to you on vouchers happened after someone came on. I watch the news. I watch broadcast news, always have, and PBS. Came on and was in front of this, and you probably know what school it is. I don't remember what school. It's an elementary school. He was sitting there just proud as punch on the news saying 75% of their budget came from vouchers. And I'm like, well, that's not a drip in the bucket. That's a hole in the bucket. And I don't know how that affected the community schools around them, but I mean, you know, the taxpayers are paying in for those to be quality educational facilities, just like we want Purdue and IU and
Well, there's also no
Ball State.
transparency with those voucher schools. How do they spend that tax dollar? We don't know. Are there school board meetings open to the public? Are they elected officials? There's no transparency on how they spend that taxpayer dollar. They can spend it any way they want.
they're just concerned. Like I said,
And there's no
Keep in mind-
accountability, no transparency.
Keep in mind,
it's
we
just gonna
have
keep
no
going in
charter,
the
we have no
ditch.
charter schools in Adams County.
That in your
We have-
district.
We have no charter schools in my district.
How much for, what are those?
Not Allen County.
Okay,
I have townships, I don't have any Fort Wayne.
I'm sorry?
you're not Allen County,
No.
okay.
No.
Close by though. There are 3 in Fort Wayne, aren't there? 3 charters that are decent enough schools?
I don't know that, so.
Yeah, they're there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you for a different reason. Is there a resource for me to look at the business and laws that you guys are gonna be debating before it happens? Because,
Absolutely.
but what would that site be? Because I'm getting information, but it's like the day you vote. It's
Okay.
kinda late.
IN.gov.
IN.gov/legislative
How early does that come up?
every day.
December.
No, but I
It's
mean,
there every day.
so like, when do we know when you're gonna debate
So
it?
let me walk you through the process. Okay, I file a bill. Let's use a non-controversial bill. Okay, my oral history bill in Indiana. Passed unanimously both houses. Nobody has a problem with that. I filed that bill in December. As soon as that bill is filed, it's a public record. It gets assigned a bill number. So if you go to IN.gov legislative, there's a tab that says bills. You can click on that. You can search by a legislator. So you can see what's all Lehman done. You can search by topic. I'm curious about history. I'm curious about alcohol. It'll tell you all the alcohol bills. Once you find that bill, and there's a synopsis, it'll say like, this is House Bill 1100, Oral History of Indiana. You click on that, it'll pull up the bill. Here's the bill, you can read it. Then on the side, there's all these different tabs. Latest version of the bill. So every time it's amended, you get a new version. It'll tell you what the bill actions are, when it gets assigned to a committee.
Get on there.
Yeah, when that committee's gonna have a hearing and so on. So that's the site right there.
That looks cleaner than everything.
Yeah.
These that are blue are the ones that are still alive.
That's the thing too, is you will be able to find what bills are still alive. Because a lot of people will call and say, what about Senate Bill such and such or House Bill? Never got a hearing or it died in the second house, so it's not gonna come up.
Okay.
That's a great resource, it is. And you can
It's
also
one
watch.
thing, I just wanna, I'll be honest, I'm not gonna go through every bill. I'm more concerned with what you guys are gonna debate.
You can also.
And you want to see there's a House calendar and a Senate calendar.
That's right. And the bills are listed Senate and House. The ones that are blue are the ones still alive. And then this will tell you bill action. So you touch that and it tells you what the next thing is going to be for that
Well,
bill.
and also if you look on that, it'll say what the bill actually, it'll say what committee was assigned to. There's a tab up here called committees. You can go to that and you can see, okay, I want to go to the Courts and Criminal Code Committee. They'll give you their schedule, when they're gonna actually hear that bill.
This was authored by Senator Thomas. It was assigned to the corrections and criminal law. And all these have been things that have happened to that bill up to today.
And really, if you want to, and you can watch it online, when that bill is in committee, being debated, you can flip it on and you can watch the committee debate, you can watch people testify. So you can get every piece of information that we're getting on those bills.
I know this,
And you can call us as well.
I haven't called you.
These,
And he answered the phone.
These
I
folks-
cannot believe that.
these folks answer the phone and take care of us in the
Thank you for your
Senate.
service. I've called you too.
They answer questions and you can call every day.
I have something, are you guys gonna leave pretty quick?
Yeah, we got about 15 minutes.
10-cent gas tax.
Yes,
Why?
because
Because there's
we,
no place else to get the money?
Huh?
Because it's been debated this session and that's what,
no, 10 cents is a long-term plan. If you want better infrastructure in Indiana, you're gonna have to raise revenue.
there's other ways to do it.
No, well, there is. We can do a general tax increase, tax everybody, okay? We can say, let's cut government, right? Let's just cut government. We're 25% less employees than we had 11 years ago, 12 years ago, okay?
So it's a lot of industries.
Our budget runs on a dime.
So it's a lot of industries.
What's that?
So it's a lot of industries.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're,
There's places to cut.
and I'm not gonna open up this can of worms necessarily, because I don't want to start an argument. But I do get emails from people that say, when you look at this and you see that between public education and higher education at 64% of your budget, if you're gonna cut anywhere, go back to your example of businesses do it. Where do you cut? Where you spend the most money. I'm not advocating to cut public education. Travis is. In fact, they put more in their budget than we did. Okay, I'm not advocating that. But if we're gonna sit here and have an honest discussion about, oh, just cut. Here's the portion we can cut. These three little bars right here, because this is education, this is Medicare, this is FSSA. Okay, these are the people taking care of the poor children, DCS and everything else. So where from this bar to that bar, if we can't cut here, then we cut here, which means we won't give the state police their pay increase. they haven't had in 10 years. Okay, I'm okay with that. You okay with that? I mean, that's the argument we have to have. I hear people say, just cut. Cut what? Bring me solutions of where we overspend in this state, and I'll be more than happy to look into that.
The other thing that we're doing is trying to make it more attached to the user. That if you drive on the highways, you're going to have to pay to drive on the highways. And so basically becomes a user fee. And that's the closest tax you can get to being the fairest tax for the people who use the product or use the service have to pay for it. And overall, people agree with that that's the way it should be.
And again, what they say is, if you're going to do it, you better spend it on roads. That's the thing. I think everybody would agree.
Right now, some of that sales tax hasn't been used on the road.
No, and we that's one where we differ with the Senate. We want to push all of that sales tax to roads, because right now it has funded education pensions, police pensions. It's funded those things. You pull those off the general fund and push those over to roads, which I'm okay with. You got to have to find a way to backfill that hole.
At the end of the session last year, you said, you start talking then about 10% tax. So I'm watching the newspapers all session, this has been debated, and I'm thinking, is it being debated, or is that already a done deal?
Oh, no, it's being debated.
Because, you know, if Bosma says that's what he gets, that's what he gets.
No, Bosman's not getting everything he wants.
Well, I'll tell you something, I like to see the day you don't do what he tells you.
Well, come
I'd
on.
like to be there that day,
You come every day then.
because I'll tell you what, yes, Mr. Bosma, no,
All right.
Mr. Bosma.
That's insulting, but that's okay. You're like,
I'm not
so,
assaulting
anyway.
you, I'm just, you know,
I have to bring,
I don't see a lot of difference between the policies.
Well, there's not. I agree with him. I mean, if he was a Democrat and he felt I'm pro-life, I'm pro-family, I'm low taxes, I'm common sense taxes, okay? Pro-business. I'm all those things. Is Brian Bosma those same things? Yes.
So you're with.
So are we going to agree on most of those
You're
things?
with Randy then.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm glad that all these
Yes,
talks
there we
we've had
go.
with you over the years, you finally come to.
There we go. We agree.
while we're bringing up contentious issues, you know, I'm one of thousands of people that say this, just because people, this is often the pitch also, but just because people are pro-Planned Parenthood and pro-reproductive freedom does not mean that they're pro-abortion. And so I want you to know that there's a whole bunch of us out there that, and we know, I mean, public school children are educated about what happens in the reproductive system. But I want you to know that my son was served at a Planned Parenthood clinic. This isn't just about, I mean, there's just media stuff that's beating up Planned Parenthood that's unfair. I mean, they're health clinics.
To a degree, yes.
You know, they're health clinics. So, I mean, you can take it off the ditch, but they're health clinics, and they typically serve an underserved population. So I'm gonna throw that in there while we're throwing stuff out there that you probably don't want to hear. And another thing that you don't want to hear, you're an attorney.
Yes.
What was your specialty? I mean, you had were you a general attorney
Well,
back?
I was a prosecutor for almost 7 years.
Okay, so that was like that.
Every civil practice.
You did everything. All right. Crazy about that. My head exploded when I read SB 309. And I'll tell you why. My property has a spring on it. I have been researching capturing electric energy on my property, part of because I'm a designer and part of because it just seemed like a smart thing to do. Because I have water squirting out the ground. So it would take very little for me to really kind of be self-sufficient. And that just seemed like a smart thing to do. So I've been researching that I've owned the property 30 years, so for a good 20 years. Been following small wind. Small wind costs the same as planting a car and concrete in your investment. And I don't know if I look like I really want to maintain a wind turbine on my property. So that's also part of the investment. Okay, who are you going to pay to maintain it? Then you go to Farm Bureau and say, how do I insure it? You know, so there's an investment. SB 309, the solar panel bill, same thing.
Where do you get your electricity?
AEP, same thing. been researching it forever. I mean, we are very lucky, actually. In the northeast corner of Adams County, we have a positive return on investment on wind. That's a big deal. We're not doing anything with that, but the wind's gonna still be there maybe 20 years from now when we might do something with that. That's like finding an oil well in Adams County and not tapping it, as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, I know people aren't happy about that too. SB 309 is like telling somebody who has a bake sale that they have to follow the same rules as when AEP buys extra power from another power company. It's just not the same.
How's that?
It's not the same because this is small solar. It's not industrial scale solar. And when you take away the individual property owner from collecting a natural resource on their property and not being able to sell it to at least get a return on investment in an appropriate period of time, which is what we've all been waiting on. People like me have been waiting on solar panels to come down and be able to be.
So how does 309 change that?
309 changes that because it pushes my return on investment out.
30 years. For 30 years.
That's kind of a bad thing.
For 30 years, if you have already done the installation.
Well, that's what I'm
Before-
saying. I've been waiting for the solar panel costs to come down to
So
install it.
if you have made the investment before December 31st of this year, for 30 years, you get the rate, at retail rate, which is nearly 50% more than what AEP has to pay for that. So you're basically getting a subsidy.
So
If
this,
you install after December 31st of this year, for 15 years, you get a 25% premium on the amount of power that you sell back to AEP. So it really is a subsidy that all the other investor-owned utility folks are paying for because you choose to have wind or solar or some other alternative form of power. Keep in mind, if you're REMC, this doesn't affect you at all. There's no effect, there's no rules.
or if you live in another state, it doesn't affect you at all.
Well, this is just Indiana.
I know that, but that's what I mean. It's like, y'all have to understand that my children don't live here anymore because of weird stuff like this.
They don't live here because of solar energy.
No, they don't live here because there's not
Like the
opportunity.
word, common way.
I mean, there's all kinds of, there's enough, I've got a son that's living in South Korea. I don't know if I'm gonna get him back to the US. I mean, when you get somebody that's an expat and sees that, yeah, there's things about that government he doesn't like either. But I mean, you look at things comprehensively when you get outside your border. And this is just a bad thing. Here's the thing about somebody trying to be more educated and more informed and participating in my government. That is really, really sad, and I'm sure you both heard it, follow the money. The man that wrote this bill, no way had the ability to write this bill. So we know that that influence came elsewhere. Nobody in his district went, wow, let's write a solar panel bill. Nobody did that. This is just disturbing on so many levels.
Well, let's if I can, let me kind of make the comparison, because we get hung up on vouchers, which are less than 3%. And we say, you know what, if they are what they are, let them go. And we're supposed to make long-lasting economic energy policy for 1,500 people in the state of Indiana. Out of 2 million users.
Here's the thing that I'm saying. When you saw that 1,500 number, why didn't you go, why in the hell don't we have more solar panels on roofs?
I'll tell you why. Because of your return on investment. And that's not something, I mean, how many businesses, if we want to start to say, we want to guarantee you your return on your investment, how many businesses will be on our doorstep saying, well, where's my guarantee?
That's the point, is you're there for us, not the
No,
businesses.
but you're saying you want a guaranteed return on your
No,
investment.
I'm not saying I want a guaranteed return on
Does it
investment,
take
and
the-
that's not your job.
But then take
It's
the rate.
not your job to worry about my guarantee.
but you-
It's my
but
job.
that's what
You're
you're
asking
saying.
us to do.
No, I'm not asking you to do that at all. I'm saying I've done independent research for myself. I'm not asking you to hand me a solar profit. I'm asking you to not prohibit it. And what I'm saying about the gentleman, I don't have his name written down, follow the money. Please stop representing companies. Please
No,
stop.
I don't. Here, let me say this. Let me say this, if I can, because it's going to where you're going. Here's my only concern. I have a brother who's a geophysicist, right? Oil and gas guy.
You get it.
He gets it, right? He said this. All these cell towers, or all these cell fields we're putting out, great. All the wind towers, great. He said, you look at technology today, the guy who invents the battery that's the size of that table and can harness the sun for the next 7 days of energy, you will never need another wind turbine. You will never need another field of solar. What do you do with them then? No,
Same thing you do at the filling station.
no. Here's what I'm saying. You look at these wind turbines, and right now they cannot be built without a subsidy. And I'll guarantee you this: when those wind turbines are no longer necessary, and that technology is coming,
Sure.
when those wind turbines, who do you think is going to take them down?
That is,
Taxpayer.
no,
Taxpayer.
that is all in the
Junkers.
lead. No, I
Okay,
know
rappers.
because our farm is part of the proposal. How that works is the leasee, the only thing you end up with is you end up with a foundation 5 foot below grade. When you lease that property to the energy company, they're responsible for removing the wind turbine.
They've gone
but
bank- they've gone
You're talking
bankrupt.
about bankrupt solar. Look at solar.
I just,
All those wind
my real argument is
Okay.
that I'm disappointed that we represented the energy company and not the individual property owners. I'm disappointed that, you know, I'm sure everybody had a big laugh when I went to the Attorney General on this, and I knew it was to get attention, but what you have to understand is, in my perspective, not only do we have a family farm that sits within that proposed wind farm site, we also have a gas easement there. Okay, they're not pumping gas, but that doesn't mean they might come back and want natural gas, and we can sell it. I mean, what I produce on my land is mine, and you've changed the rules on that.
Yeah,
I
we
don't
don't
like
want-
that. I want you to
No,
look
we're only
at.
gonna subsidize you for 30 years, so we're sorry.
I want.
We didn't make a
Well,
law.
I'll say this. I think a lot of people said we do this and then it's a done issue for 30 years. I think that's wrong. I guarantee you, there will be solar bills next year and the year after and the year after. And part of it is with that technology change, if more people embrace it, the General Assembly will have to react.
Kelly, you had a question.
So
Not a question, just a comment. Thank you for the resolution to recognize Indiana Library Federation, 125 years in the support of libraries. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.
We're out of time.
I got one
We've got to go to
remark.
Mark.
I want to thank you, Travis, for the coffee.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
I've come to, after a lot of these bills that you have voted against me, it's surprising you've done something for me. I want to tell you, I appreciate it.
That's quite all right. I'm glad to help
I
out.
just,
I'll leave
there
you-
are, I brought some festival guides and some maps if anybody wants them back there.